calls proof Iran is supplying Houthi rebels in Yemen with ballistic missiles. Standing in front of remains of a missile, the US ambassador to the UN said Iran made and supplied the weapon used by rebels to fire at Riyadh airport in Saudi Arabia last month. Edis Tianshan reports from Washington.
Remnants of a drone and a short-range missile. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley claimed that these remnants of weapons were made in Iran and then transferred by the Shia country to the Houthi militia in Yemen.
In this warehouse is concrete evidence of illegal Iranian weapons proliferation gathered from direct military attacks on our partners in the region.
The Pentagon says this missile was used in an attack against an international airport in Saudi Arabia in November. Under some regulations defined in the Iranian nuclear deal, Iran is forbidden to supply or transfer any weapons without the consent of the Security Council, the place where Ambassador Haley plans on taking her evidence next.
It's not just European countries that we're going to be asking the entire international community. And yes, we will start with the Security Council in terms of doing that, but it is time for all of them to wake up. This is going to be eye-opening.
Haley did not elaborate on when or where these arms had been found, citing this information to be classified. But the Pentagon referred to Iranian corporate logos and designs on the remnants, which it says are unique to the Iranian defense industry. The latest UN report monitoring Iran's sanctions only found that 2 missiles fired at Saudi Arabia back in July and November had a common origin, but did not specify if they were provided by Iran. The Iranians say the US claim is as erroneous as the ones made about the existence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq in 2003.
This comes only days after the U.S. Congress allowed a deadline for reimposing sanctions on Iran to pass. Now, many see the presentation by Haley as a hint on an even harder line against Tehran by Donald Trump. The president must now work with Congress in determining the fate of the Iran nuclear deal. And regardless of any future U.S. decision, getting other permanent members of the UN Security Council on board with altering the deal remains unlikely. Edis Tianshan, TRT World, Washington.
Well, let's get more on this story. We're joined by Milad Jokar, who's a visiting lecturer in Middle East Affairs at the Normandy Business School in France. Thanks ever so much for joining us. What do you think that Nikki Haley was hoping to prove by this very public show and the allegations?
Well, it's once again one of Nikki Haley's diatribes against Iran in an effort to mobilize the international community to take action against Iran, and maybe military action, which is something really concerning. And her efforts go against the will of the international community to engage with Iran, to have a normalization of their relationship with the Iranians, especially after the nuclear deal that was meant to open a new chapter in the relationship between Iran and the international community. So, once again, as the report said, the United Nations reports explain that they don't have evidence as to who is the supplier of those weapons. So I see this as an effort to really take action against Iran. And what's concerning as well is that we see that the United States is now following the Saudi, Emirati, and Israeli policy when it comes to Iran.
So that UN report wasn't definitive, was it? So for this administration, why do you think that Iran has become public enemy number one? Well,
for many reasons. We see that the Israelis and the Saudis did not really approve the nuclear deal with Iran because they feared a change in the geopolitical balance of power. That is to say that once the nuclear deal was agreed on, Iran would be back on the regional scene. And this, the Israeli and the Saudi believe, is going to be at their expense, meaning that their word would not mean as much because the Iranian will be brought to the table to deal with regional issues. But right now what we have is more militarization of the region, and the United States remains the main supplier of weapons in the region, and the Saudi used American-made weapons to have what we have in Yemen that is to say the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. So what needs to be done right now is the recognition that Iran is a regional actor. It has a role to play in the region, and there should be talks with Iran, not just talks about Iran, using megaphones at the United Nations. So diplomacy right now is not in good shape, especially between the United States and Iran, something that John Kerry under the Obama administration did very well, that is to say engaging with Mohammad Javad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister, which was something we've never seen before. But right now there's no talk, there's no direct communication, which means that there's a pretty dangerous situation in which fears on both sides leads to perception, and the perception can lead to miscalculation, which can have really damaging effect to a region that only needs one thing, that is to say, stability.
So without the right kind of diplomacy, it could all degenerate. Well, Milad Jokar in Normandy, thank you very much. And this week.